the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Friday. Well, where I am, it's late afternoon, but for most of you, it's probably morning. So, good morning. Hope everybody's had a great week and looking forward to the weekend. As you know, I'm traveling this week. I am currently in Madrid, and we'll be talking about the conference I just attended, where I participated in a debate, and then participated in the rest of the conference, and found it quite interesting. So I think you'll find. Hopefully, you guys will find it interesting as well. Let's see, why is this not working? Okay, one second, give me a second here. Getting all of this set up in advance. I thought I'd done this. Error requesting authorization code. But then it works. All right, we'll see. Let's see, where are we? All right, let me know if there are any issues, problems. I'm doing from a hotel room. You never know with the internet quality and so on. Hopefully the picture's okay. I do see it's a little kind of focusing in and out, but we'll work on that before the next trip. There's some setting in the camera that I have that must be wrong that I need to set up. Anyway, yeah, I know that I've noticed the camera's doing the focus thing, and I don't think it matters. For some reason, I try to change the depth of field, but it doesn't seem like it actually changes the depth of field. So I'm gonna have to read up and get a manual and try to figure out what exactly is going on and how I can fix it. And I will do that between this trip and next trip. And next trip is coming up very quickly, so we'll do that in between. Let's see, anything I'm sorry, I haven't done any news roundup shows. I just haven't had time to read the news. So I haven't really been following what's going on in the world. In terms of the big stories, nothing much seems to be happening. The U.S. is consumed politically by the standoff in Congress that is going to lead probably to a government shutdown, or at least that's what many Republicans are trying to achieve. And in terms of in Ukraine, nothing dramatic is happening. Although I did read this morning that, or this afternoon, that Ukraine a missile hit the Russian fleet's headquarters in the middle of the city of I can't pronounce it, Sacrafice in Crimea. That'll be a major event if it actually happened. That it's probably high casualty event if it's accurate reporting, and a lot of very senior people within the Russian military were probably taken out. So it'll be interesting to see what reports come out of that later today. But generally, the news requires serious work in terms of preparing for that show, and I just haven't had the time during this trip to do that, and I fear that that's going to be the case on most of my travels. It's going to be easier for me, in a sense, to riff about the things I'm experiencing while I'm traveling, the people I'm engaging with, the ideas that I'm engaging with while I'm traveling, like I did a few days ago on the anarcho-capitalism debate, and today we'll do on the conservatives. It'll be easier to riff on those things than to actually prepare a news-related topic. So I apologize, but when I'm home, I promise I will do those every day, or at least every day that I can. All right, so I'm here at a conference. It's called New Direction. This is I think my third time at this conference. I was first invited to participate in the New Direction conference, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. The conference was held then in Albania, and I was invited by Daniel Hannan. Daniel Hannan is is a free market conservative, part of the Conservative Party in the UK. A big fan of Ayn Rand's. I don't think he doesn't necessarily, he doesn't agree, but he's definitely a big fan. Has said very positive things about Atlas Shrugged and the Fountainhead. And Daniel invited me to participate years ago. I can't even remember the topic. I was on a panel, and this was in Albania. The conference is a conference of the major European right-of-center political parties in the European Parliament. So these are all people who work in Brussels and who represent their countries at the European Parliament from all over Europe, but all right-of-center political parties. So the UK, Spain, nobody from France, which is curious, and not a huge representation from Germany. But you get the Netherlands, you get the Scandinavian countries, and in Scandinavia, the representatives here were not center-right, they were far-right. So it's kind of a mixture of center-right and far-right. So Sweden, it was the Populist Party. The Finns, it was the Finn Party, which is the Populist Party in Finland. Poland, the ruling party in Poland is represented here. Hungary, the ruling party in Hungary is represented here. In some of the Balkans, and then on top of that, you've got representatives of all the leading think tanks in Europe, or many of the leading think tanks in Europe, from the UK, the IEA, and the Adam Smith Institute, and from many other countries around Europe. You get representatives of their kind of right of center think tanks. So it's quite a combination. It's an impressive list of people who are very influential in the political world in Europe, very influential in the think tank world in Europe, generally lean conservative. There are a few classical liberals. There were a few classical liberals, libertarians, who consider themselves libertarians here, but the dominant group here are conservatives, right of center and even far right conservatives. So it's a great place. Oh, so that was the first time I was there. It was in Albania. The second time was 2 years ago, during COVID, 2021, and it was in Lisbon. And they had me come and give a talk about individual rights, and it was interesting. They gave me kind of a keynote talk, and it was fascinating because the audience was very split. There was a significant percentage of the audience that hated it. I mean, hated it. They were so furious. They reject the concept of individual rights. They reject the concept of individualism. They're very focused on nationalism and on religion and on collectivism. And so it was a fascinating. Me being there was fascinating because it clearly shook up the audience. Most of the stuff they hear, stuff repeated to them that they agree with, and this really shook it up. And I think that was my role, is to shake it up. And the Poles wouldn't talk to me, and but the Americans and some of the Brits really liked it. But the Brits, many of the Brits, also quite religious. So it was interesting. This year, they invited me to come and do a debate. Originally, I was supposed to debate Yoram Chazoni on national conservatism versus liberal ideas, classical liberal ideas. But Yoram Chazoni had to cancel at the last minute, so I debated James Orr. James Orr from Cambridge University. He's a professor, philosophy professor at Cambridge University, so very articulate, powerful mind. And he represented the national conservative movement in our debate, and so it was quite interesting, and it was quite good, and a lot of people really enjoyed the debate. A lot of people, again, were very upset at what I had to say. But anyway, we did that debate. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. And then there are these breakout sessions, and in each one of these breakout sessions, there's a panel. And the panel gives short presentations, and then everybody participates. And I went to quite a few of those and participated in all of them. And again, created this real buzz because I represented views that were just not, they're not the views that they are typically exposed to. They're not the ideas and views that they typically engage with. And so it was super interesting, partially just to watch their faces. But you know, they're not used to being challenged. What was I going to say? Yeah, so this has been going on for 2 days. We just ended it. Quite fascinating, and I thought I'd give you some thoughts about the event. I mean, the debate was good. I mean, basically, you know the framework of the debate. I mean, I argue for individualism both in morality and in politics, and the National Conservatives basically argue. And here, I think he was more, I think, accommodating in some ways than Yom Chazoni would be. He argued what you would call a soft collectivism, right? We don't want too much collectivism, not too much emphasis on the collective, but the collective does matter. Nations do matter, and we have to have nationalistic policies. And philosophically, he's against individualism and the importance of the family, and of course the importance of religion. And the importance of religion as a source of community and a source of knowledge was quite important. So I thought the debate was good. I think we each did a good job articulating our views, and I think the audience was quite engaged. There were a lot of questions. It was a 90-minute debate, and with a lot of questions from the audience. And I thought it went quite well. And the comments of people afterwards, this happens a lot when I go to these conferences, is you do something, and then throughout the rest of the conference, in almost every panel, they feel like they have to address the points that I made because it shook them up, and it seems like these are the points that need to be contradicted. It means they're thinking about it, which is exactly my purpose. It means they realize maybe that their views are not the only ones in town, and they need to really engage. And a big part of me going to these conferences is to kind of bring about engagement and to get them to engage and to get them to take objectivism, the ideas of objectivism, seriously. So I sat in on panels on geopolitics, specifically on a panel on a panel on geopolitics, which was focused on Cold War 2.0. And I find that fascinating, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And on a panel on can conservatives and liberals get along? Liberals here meaning classical liberals. Can we get along? Can we work together? And then a panel on immigration, which was very revealing and very interesting. Immigration, of course, came up throughout. Immigration is the number one issue that concerns conservatives. So let me make a general comment, and then I want to talk about the panels. If I had to say what was the common thread among, what makes a conservative in Europe right now? What is it that really animates them and motivates them and drives them, the conservative movement? I would say that the number one thing is fear. They're driven by fear. And it really is interesting. These are smart people, intelligent people, motivated people, but they really are afraid. They fear the left, they fear woke. I mean, constantly talking about it, constantly worried about it, constantly concerned. They fear immigrants. God, do they fear immigrants. Immigrants are going to completely destroy the world. They fear secularism. They really fear secularism. They view secularism and the secularization of society as maybe the biggest threat, other than immigrants maybe, to Europe, to civilization, to Western civilization. And I think that fear motivates them to take religion even more seriously than they otherwise would, and motivates them to engage with religion even more than they otherwise would. So they're quite religious. The religion is very important to them. They don't strike me as, I don't know. I have a vision, I have a view of religion maybe shaped by the fact that I was raised Jewish, of people who really take religion seriously as dressing like 18th century, people and devoting basically their entire lives to their religion and focusing almost everything on the religion. And it strikes me how Christians can be super religious and you can't even tell until they actually bring it up. So I don't know how religious they really are, and to what extent is their religiosity motivated? To what extent is their religiosity motivated by fear of losing values if you're secularized? Fear of a view that holds that in order to have morality, you must have religion, and that motivates them. Fear of not being able to transmit values to young people unless they are themselves religious. It's hard for me to tell how deep the religiosity goes, but it's everywhere. I mean, the closing speech at the conference was by a Brazilian intellectual, and basically the message was, at the end of the day, without religion we are nothing. Religion must play a key part of a role in one's individual's life and in politics. You cannot separate state from religion. So they, in a continent that is super secular, in a continent where religious observance is in the decline, in a continent where religion is not taken very seriously, particularly in Western Europe, but even in Eastern Europe, even in places like Hungary where they talk about Christianity all the time, they don't take it that seriously. They don't go to church. They don't practice. Here are conservatives trying to appeal and trying to gain traction and trying to combat the woke on the basis of religion. It's all they have to offer is this primitivism, this primitive form of philosophy, this debunked, ridiculous notion about a God in the sky who, cares about what you actually do. And it's not surprising they're losing. And I think they know they're losing and they're panicking. So, one of my arguments to them throughout in the different panels was, look, if you want to attract people, if you want to get people on your side, if you want to combat the left, you have to offer a positive vision. You have to offer a real vision for the future. You have to offer an alternative to the kind of utopian nonsense that the left offers. But all they have and all they can come up with as an alternative is religion. That's it. They can't go anywhere else but to religion. So it's truly sad. It's sad, but not unexpected. They talk a lot about freedom. But when push comes to shove on any particular issue, they're eager to give up freedom if it achieves their, cultural, political, nationalistic goals. They talk about freedom, but it's freedom for their own people, often at the expense of others. And it's limited freedom. It's limited by, so they don't want to privatize education. They want to control education and the values that are taught through education. They want to dictate the curriculum instead of the left dictating the curriculum. They want freedom of religion, but they don't want freedom. Not economic freedom, and not political freedom. Not really, not if you understand what that really means. So in that sense, again, quite sad, quite depressing. You know, and when discussing, you know, whether there can be a cooperation between classical liberals, never mind objectivists, but classical liberals and conservatives, you know, the conservatives say, some of them at least say, sure, as long as you're willing to subservient, as long as you're willing to give up on your absolutist notions of liberty, of freedom, as long as you are the liberal, the classical liberals, are junior partners in the coalition, as long as you accept the fact that religion has to be at the forefront, as long as you accept the fact that nationalism and nationalistic goals can be, it should be, and legitimately should be used by coercion. So they offer, you know, an alternative to left-wing collectivism. They offer right-wing collectivism. They offer to left-wing subjectivism and left-wing woke, they offer right-wing subjectivism and right-wing woke, which is religion. The idea that religion is better than woke or is more rational than woke is absurd. Both are completely irrational. Both are finally, ultimately, about emotions. A guy who's actually an objectivist, a young objectivist, was at the conference. He actually he was invited to the conference. He's a Brit, and he's an Israeli who lives in England. And he came up to me and said, you know, the one thing that is common to everything that I hear at this conference is they're all talking about emotions and intuitions. He says, they sound exactly like the left, just their emotions and intuitions are different. So it's so the conservatives latch onto religion because they view it as some remnant of, you know, of the past, of the cause and the origins of Western civilization. I've talked a lot about why religion is not at the base and the origin of Western civilization, and I'm sure I'll have future opportunities to talk more about it, and happy to answer questions in the Super Chat if you have about that. By the way, Super Chat is open, so if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. I think so far Michael has asked all the questions, or almost all the questions. Andrew, I think, has one question in there. But feel free to join Michael in asking the questions. No, religion destroys as well. Wokeness destroys and religion destroys. Religion doesn't build and elevate. Religion destroys. It destroys the human soul. It destroys the human spirit. And it destroys the most important thing. It destroys individual autonomy. It destroys your ability to think. It undermines your ability to think, and therefore it destroys life. And it destroys liberty. It destroys freedom. This is why religious conservatives cannot be and won't be for individual liberty. Because they understand. They understand that individual liberty ultimately is not consistent with religion. Religion is an epistemology of authoritarianism. Religion is the epistemology of revelation. Religion ultimately has to undermine reason. It has to negate reason. When reason comes to conclusions that are not acceptable to a religionist, reason is out. So, instead of seeking to ground morality, just like we ground science in reality, to ground morality in facts, in man's nature and the requirements for man's survival, the requirements for man's flourishing, which is the way Aristotle tried to ground morality, and where Ayn Rand completed that mission by grounding reality in the nature of man and the nature of reality, in the nature and facts about the world out there, they think that the fantasy of religion, is a grounding. But it's not. Religion is not grounding of reality. Religion is grounding reality in myth. Religion is grounding religion is grounding morality in myth. Religion is grounding morality in fantasy. Religion is grounding morality in complete subjectivism. There is no more subjective of morality than is religion, and you can tell by the fact that religions don't agree about many things, including in morality. But and there's no way for Islam to prove to Christianity, to prove to Judaism, to prove to Buddhism, to prove to any other morality that they're right or wrong, because there's no standard. The standard is God. Well, who's talked to God lately? None of you have talked to God lately. Nobody has talked to God lately. Nobody's ever talked to God, because God does not exist. So it's a grounding of morality in a fantasy, in the non-existent. When the project of morality, as Aristotle laid it out and should have been pursued further, the project of morality is to ground it in science, in reality, in the nature of man. And until you do that, now Rand has already done that, but if you don't do that, then your morality is completely subjective, completely at whim. And this is the point this Israeli was saying. They're all about whim. They're all about emotions. And that's true, and that makes them the same as the left. The left and the right are the same. They ground everything in terms of emotion. All right, I have a hard stop at 12, but let me say one more thing, which I found interesting about the Cold War 2.0. Two things I found interesting. It's a panel of three experts. Really interesting guys, very qualified, very articulate. And again, the fear. What are they afraid of? The global South. It's a term coined by Marxists. There is no such thing as the global South, but the global South, people with different color skins, people who have been poor. They're really afraid of them, even though what power does the global South have? Particularly if it's not free, and if it's free, why are we afraid of them? They're afraid of China. God, are they afraid of China? And they're afraid of Russia. I understand Russia, but the fear of China, we'll talk about this on future shows. The fear of China is I think is both mistaken and it will ultimately make things worse, not better. In fearing them and giving them more credit and giving them more importance than they actually deserve. But again, fear is what motivated the panel, and immigration was fascinating. I mean, there was one libertarian guy there who advocated for basically, some form of open immigration or loose, relatively free immigration. But everybody in the room was so anti-immigration, so afraid. Crime, terrorism, culture is going to disappear. We just don't want immigrants. We don't like immigrants. We don't want them. That's the Polish attitude. Really sad, and really the positive vision. They don't want to get rid of the European Union. I mean, nobody really wants to get rid of the European Union as long as the small economies can leech off of the large economies, but primarily Germany and France. So they don't want to get rid of the European Union because of that. They know they need to stick together in order to defend themselves against places like Russia. So they have to stick together in order to have that defense. I think to some extent they understand the economic benefits that the union provides them, not just the redistribution of wealth that happens between the richer countries and the poor countries, but also just in terms of trade and free movement and all of that. I think they value it. So even the very kind of right-wing conservatives who are very nationalistic, not quite willing to say we should leave the European Union, we should bust it up. They want more autonomies to nation states. They want the European Union to have less power, but they don't want to break it up, which I think is really interesting, because there were periods in which, if you remember, not only Brexit, but there was going to be the Italy exit, and there's going to be a variety of different exits out of the Union, but nobody's left. There was real fear when Brexit happened. Okay, that's the end of the European Union. Everybody's going to want to leave. And they're not going to, because the benefits are so striking. And now you could argue with the failure of Brexit, with the fact that Brexit has turned out economically to be really, really bad for the UK, arguably because of what they did, because of what they did post-Brexit. But people associated with Brexit, I don't see anybody else leaving the European Union. A good example of that is Meloni in Italy, and who is a rock star considered here. She is of a party that might want to leave, but has basically declared that she's staying with the European Union. There's no way Italy is leaving. Italy, again, benefits enormously both from the stability of the euro and from the help of the richer countries in Europe. All right, let's do some of these super chats. There are quite a few of them, and I don't have a lot of time, so let's start with these. Michael says, is wealth creation not only affected by taxes and regulations, but by the attitude of the population towards risk and wanting more in life? If taxes and regulations were lowered in Europe, would they even see a substantial increase in entrepreneurship? I think they would, but not as much as maybe you would in the United States for cultural reasons. First of all, shockingly for them, I think the immigrants would be the entrepreneurs, right? They would be a big chunk of the entrepreneurs. The fact that people are willing to pick up their roots, travel across deserts and across seas to a new place to start a new life suggests a certain risk-taking mentality, suggests a certain entrepreneurial spirit. So I think you've got a lot of entrepreneurs among the immigrant population in Europe, even though they're uneducated, many of them are uneducated and so on. It doesn't preclude entrepreneurship, plus many of them are not. BioNTech, the partner of Pfizer in the vaccine, for COVID vaccine, it was founded by two Turkish immigrants, or families that immigrated from Turkey. So immigrants is one form. But the other is, there are some Europeans who are entrepreneurial and they're being held down, they're being suppressed, they're being denied the opportunity to be entrepreneurs by the system. So while Europe would not see an increase in entrepreneurship like you would see in a place like the US or China or in other parts of Asia, where the cultures are cultures of risk-taking and the culture is a culture of entrepreneurship and where entrepreneurs are admired and respected, it would see some. But you're right, Europe is a culture that lacks a culture where ambition is not highly regarded, where failure is regarded very harshly. It's not a culture that views positively failure as a learning experience like Silicon Valley culture. And it is a culture, unfortunately, where fear plays a big role. Fear of failure, fear of newness, fear of change, where even I think the so-called progressives or left are conservative in that sense, are quite happy to settle. And what are environmentalists, after all, if not a form of, another form of anti-progress, just like in many respects conservatives are anti-progress. So yes, Europe, it wouldn't be enough. You really need cultural change, and Europe needs and this is where immigrants can play such an important role, and that is to bring that culture of risk-taking and entrepreneurship to Europe. All right, Michael also asks, where do you see Rand's influence today in colloquial speech, like the attacks on big pharma and greed, on Marx's influence in the day-to-day language. Does Rand's contribution have that equivalent? Yeah, I mean, it's not much, but there are a variety of different words that would not be used, I think, without Rand, or would not have the kind of meaning that they have. I think one is capitalism. There was a period in the 50s and 60s where capitalism was not used. Nobody talked about it. It was very negative connotations. I think she, and to some extent Milton Friedman, brought the term capitalism back and made it respectable and made it positive, to the extent that somebody like Elizabeth Warren even will say she's pro-capitalism because she doesn't want to say, so the attitude towards capitalism, the attitude flip side towards socialism, I think have very much been influenced by Ayn Rand. I'd say statism is a term that I think, was, I don't know if introduced by Ayn Rand, but certainly caught on more with Ayn Rand. And there are a few others, which I can't remember right now, but I'd have to think about, but there are colloquials, that there are words that have got enhanced meaning, if you will, because of Rand, because of Objectivism. And that's part of what we're trying to keep alive. Ian Meerkat says, the new right is less nuts than woke. The Democrats are less nuts than the Republicans. So the new right is less nuts than woke. It depends on the new right. If you look at the integralists, if you look at some of the more, if you look at some of the more radical right-wing parties, it doesn't get quite nuttier than that. But then you say the Democrats are less nuts than Republicans, so that the political manifestation is better. Yeah, I mean, I'm not convinced of that, but yes, I think that both the new right and woke are nuts, and I think to the extent that they have influence over politics, they're both very, very dangerous. Colleen says, religious people are like people who are against legalizing drugs. The only thing stopping people from killing people is religion, and the only thing that stops people from doing drugs are the laws. They have no idea of personal values. Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, as if, right? And what's really interesting is that it's not like religion really stops crime. It's not like atheists are overrepresented in prisons. It's not like most of the gangs out there are comprised of atheists. So it's, I think that the whole conception of morality and religion is so wrong. I mean, yes, I'm sure there's some people that don't rape and pillage because they are afraid of God, but on the other hand, in history, there's been a lot of rape and pillage that was ordered by God, or at least ordered by God's representatives on earth, and people have, jumped to do it. Violence is part of religion, has always been part of religion, and some of the most violent wars in all of history, maybe the most violent wars in all of human history, have been wars of religion. The 30-year war is said to have killed more people per capita than any other war in human history. Catholics slaughtering Protestants, slaughtering Catholics. In the name of what? The wars of Islam, some of the wars of Islam, all religious-based. And go back to Old Testament and the religious-based wars, God telling the Jews to slaughter people. So, no, I mean, I don't buy that religion pacifies people or eliminates violence. I think quite the contrary. And I don't buy that religion makes people moral. The religious people that I know are no more moral in any kind of sense than the secular people I know. Often quite the opposite. Let's see, Michael. Are people afraid to acknowledge the existence of evil? I don't know, but of course, you have to be careful about the existence of evil. Evil exists, but it doesn't exist in terms of a metaphysical force in reality, which I think a lot of Christians believe it is, and that is an influence from the Zoroastrians, which was the religion of Persia, before Islam. The Zoroastrians believed that there are two basically metaphysical elements in reality, one good, one evil, that is constantly at war. And the whole concept of the devil in Christianity, I think, comes from Zoroastrians and gives evil an existence. And I don't think Christians are afraid to acknowledge the existence of evil because they view it that way. There is a devil, there is evil within every soul of every man, the original sin. So I don't think people are afraid to acknowledge the existence of evil. They just give it more power than it should really have, in a sense, and they make it out to be a metaphysical force or a force in nature, rather than how objectivists view evil, which is evil is the consequence of evasion. Evil is evading reality. It's not being rational. It's not using your mind. Michael says, what are your thoughts on Paul Volker? Was he better than Alan Greenspan? I think he was better than Alan Greenspan. I think Alan Greenspan made a lot of mistakes and did a lot of things that kind of solidified the power and influence of the Fed over the markets, and became kind of a kind of market whisperer that kind of helped manipulate the market up and the market down, and rather than kind of this focus on the neutrality of money, and which again you can't. So I would say Paul Volcker is better than Alan Greenspan, because Alan Greenspan was so corrupt and so wrong on so many things. I think Paul Volcker was, for what he needed to do, he needed to crush inflation, did a good job. Exactly how much to attribute to what he did in terms of the crushing inflation, I'm not in a position to really say. Okay, Michael asks a lot of questions here. A lot of this is all Michael. I used to think embracing objectivism was primarily a matter of honesty, but do certain convictions require more than honesty to reach? They require a particular method. Well, certainly they require, all convictions require, rational convictions require rationality, which is a method, require logic, require consistency with reality. I think that method is available to almost anybody, at least at some level, if you are honest, and that's why I think honesty is so important. But you do need logic and you need reason, and you need to apply them, and you need to apply them consistently, and integrity, and you need to adhere to them. Michael, do you find it difficult to stay away from negative people? No, I stay away from negative. There are lots of negative people. That it's part of the world out there. People have value beyond the specific orientation they have. So I don't know if I find it hard to stay away, difficult to stay away. Some people I stay away from, some people I don't. But it's not based on just being negative. It's based on the totality of the value they represent. Like I said, thanks, Yaron, for being one of the few good guys in history. Well, I don't know about that, but thank you. I appreciate being one of the good guys, or being recognized as one of the good guys. Michael says, do people care about their own rights? Do they know they have rights? I think they sense they have rights. I don't think they know they have rights. I don't think they really know what rights are. So I don't think they know they have rights in that sense. They kind of sense that their life belongs to them, and who are you to tell me what to do? You get that kind of at a visceral level from people. So viscerally, they seem to acknowledge the fact of rights, even if they don't have it really worked out and thought through and explicit. Andrew says, Ayn Rand told Johnny Carson that she was happy to discuss ideas, but not to debate them. Why do you think that was her position? I don't know, but I think at the end of the day, there's a certain element of a waste of time in debating them. If your focus is on convincing the party you're debating, That is, her ideas are new, they were radical, consistent, and in a sense, her presentation of them constituted a debate within every person who listened to them. So every person in the audience is debating your ideas when you're presenting something new. And you don't really need somebody to be their mouthpiece. And you need the time to articulate fully the actual argument that you make. So I think that's what you would mean. What would be the point? But yeah, I'm not sure, right? Somebody would have to have asked her. Simon Guassi says, how does Rand justify her definition of sacrifice of values? Don't sacrifice a higher value for lower value. How does she justify it? Well, she justifies based on the ultimate, the standard of value. The standard of value for every decision in life is life. And sacrificing a higher value for a lower value is sacrificing a piece of your life. It is moving against your life. What are values? Values are the things that promote your life, right? Here we're assuming rational values. The things that promote your life, the things that enhance your survival, the things that enhance your flourishing. To give up a higher value for a lower value is to move against life. It's to move towards death. And that essentially is immoral, right? Morality is about those values and virtues that move it towards life. Giving up those values is moving us away from life, which means wrong, shouldn't be done. So I think that's how she would justify. She justifies it. It's based on which direction you're heading, towards life or away from life. You want to avoid that which moves you away from life and embrace that which moves you towards life. Francisco, can you give the best 3 presidents of the United States in the last 123 years and why? A show ranking of all the presidents could be very interesting. Thanks for your commitment. God, it's very hard to do, partially because I don't know that I know history well enough. But over the last 123 years, I mean, you've got to say that Coolidge and Harding, I think you'd say, Coolidge and Harding, and I don't know who came before Teddy Roosevelt and who came before Wilson. So I don't remember the sequence of presidents kind of from 1900 on. But I'd have to say Coolidge and Harding. I can't think of anybody else who would qualify. Basically, it's because they saw government as limited. They did not grow and expand government. In the face of a recession, they did nothing and allowed the markets to clear. Yeah, McKinley wasn't great. McKinley got us into the war in the Philippines. So McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt, then what? Who comes after Teddy Roosevelt? Yeah, I think those are the primes. In the last, since World War II, I'd say the best president was probably Reagan. Taft. When was Taft? Taft was after. Well, Taft was probably okay. I don't know anything bad that he did. That's already something good. So maybe Coolidge, Harding, Taft. Maybe that's it. Those are the 3 best. Reagan has his real flaws, primarily the bringing of religion into the heart of the Republican Party, the bringing the moral majority and giving them the party on a silver platter. Taft was before Wilson, so maybe it was Taft. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been impressive. Presidents in the U.S. over the last 123 years, not an impressive record at all. All right, Robert says, if God is your co-pilot, you'd better pray you don't ever fall asleep at the wheel. Yep, absolutely. All All right, let's see. Okay, good. That's our chat. Thank you particularly to Michael, who asked a lot of the questions and got us most of the way to our goal. We're only $38 away from the goal, so if somebody wants to, as a value for value, if you found the show interesting and of value, then consider doing something towards the 38. You can do it as a sticker, or you can do it as a last-minute question, but a sticker right now would be appropriate. Thank you to those who did stickers, Antonio, and there were a few others. No one, and let's see. Yeah, I think no one again, and I think that was it. All right, so thank you guys. I will be back. I'll probably do a show. Tomorrow. Well, maybe. I don't want to promise. I'll definitely do a show on Sunday, and we'll do shows next week. But for sure, the next show will be on Sunday. I might do a show tomorrow, but problem is if I do it here in the morning, it'll be middle of the night for you guys. So I might just do it for the Europeans, just for their sake, on a Saturday morning. We'll see. Thank you. I will see you all, I'm sure, on Sunday and the rest of next week. Bye, everybody.